Let's go ahead and push an app to Cloud Foundry and bind it to the org plan. So if we look inside this directory, we'll see a simple Node.js server along with an application manifest. And the application manifest is what Cloud Foundry uses to define an application. So if we actually go in and look at what's inside this manifest, we can see a simple YAML file with a name. So the name of the app we want to push, in this case, would be sample. The memory we want to give it, the number of instances we want to run, the host name, so sample dot whatever your domain is, the path, so we're going to push everything inside this directory, and the build pack we want to use, which is Node.js because we're pushing a Node.js application. So let's actually go ahead and do cf apigee push. It's going to ask if we're using the micro gateway co-resident plan. We're not, so we're going to go ahead and click no. Name we want to push it with, say sample. It's going to actually go ahead and push the app to Cloud Foundry and actually start it up. So right now, it's actually downloading the build pack and installing all the dependencies it might need. So for instance, it's installing Node.js as well as all the dependencies our app has along with it. And once this completes, it will actually start up the application. And we can see that right now. And so we can see the app is running. And if we actually do cf apps, we can see some information about it. So, it started, it has 1 out of 1 instances running, 600 megs of memory, 1 gig of disk, and the URL that it has. So we actually can go ahead and curl this, and we get back a hello from cf app response. So now what we can do is actually bind this to the service instance we made earlier. So if we do cf services, remember we have this org service. So what we're actually going to do is actually do a cf apigee bind org. In this case, we're actually not going to use a bearer token to authenticate. We're actually going to use basic authorization. So we're going to go ahead and press no. So we're going to do your username, password. In this case, we're actually going to do a proxy bind because we actually want to create the proxy and bind the application. So we're going to do proxy bind. We're going to do test as our environment. Remember, it was a Mare demo 5. The sample is the name of the app we want to bind to. Domain is actually going to be apps.pcf.apigeek.net. This is actually a parameter that is for people who have a different virtual host configuration to what we configured inside the tile, but we don't need that right now, so we're actually going to go ahead and click no on that. And the protocol is actually going to be HTTP, and the service instance name is going to be this org that we had made earlier. So we're going to do org. So what it's going to do now is actually it's going to bundle up a proxy, and it's going to send it up to Apigee, which is going to create the proxy in the cloud. And then once that finishes, it's going to bind the application to the service, and all requests coming into sample.apps.pcf.apigeek.net will actually be redirected to the cloud before coming back down to hitting the application. Cool. So now that it's actually bound, we can actually do this with cf routes. We can actually see that the sample app is bound to the service org. Now remember, this is a route service, and that's why we can actually see that the routes are different, or is going to be bound to sample with the service org. So if we actually go into our Apigee console and refresh the proxy page, what we can actually see is that we actually have a new proxy that's got created. So if you go in here, we have the base path is the name of the app that we have, and the target URL is actually the URL of the app that we want to hit. So if we actually go to the trace tab and we start a trace session, and we make that curl request again, and this might take a bit to reflect in Apigee. What we can see is the request actually came in and out of Apigee, and as well as all the different trace information you might want. It went through, it hit the target URL JS script with a spike arrest, and whatever other policies you might want in here, you can do that in the Develop tab. So let's say we actually are done with binding our org plan to our application and we don't want to do that anymore. What we have to do is we can actually do a CF Apigee unbind org, and the name of the application we want to unbind, so we're going to unbind sample. The domain is actually apps.pcf.apigee.net. The service instance we want to unbind from is org. And now the app is now unbound, and requests will just go straight through and hit our application instead of going out to Edge and coming back. So if you do curl, we get the same response back. It's just that it's not going to Apigee anymore.